Hi guys, and welcome back to the Future Fit Pro Zone. My name's Andy Cowling, and this is the last part of the Better Squat series videos, putting it all into practice. So today we're going to be looking at postural assessment, movement assessment. We're also going to be looking at mobility, flexibility. We're looking at range and depth of movement, and also then moving on to the different options that are available given the circumstances.
So a few key points with postural assessment is to make sure they don't know that you are assessing posture. That way they will stand naturally and you will get an honest assessment of what you are trying to see. Do not apply good posture training just yet. We want to see what's wrong so we know what we need to do to put it right. View from the front, from the side and from the rear. Make notes of what you see or take pictures for detailed analysis, or you can use smartphone apps such as Posture Pro or Posture Zone to help you see the alignments that or misalignments that you are looking for. So the important thing to remember about posture assessment is to never take things for granted. This is an elite level netball player who's currently with the Hertfordshire Mavericks development squad, and they're part of the Netball Super League, so equivalent to the Football Premier League. And here we can see that there are some clear alignment issues. If we look in the first picture, you can see that there is an offset of the hips, there is an offset to the shoulders, and likewise on the side elevations, as it were, you can see that there is a forward lean. So what's clear from the outset here is there is some muscle imbalance, and in fact there is some dysfunction between the anterior and posterior elements of the body. So before we could really start to push the performance in strength training with squats, we would need to correct the posture to bring all of these lines to be level and square and in a line from the side elevation. But more importantly is what we see here. If we look at the red lines that I've applied onto these photos, you can see this is the alignment of the kneecap with the second, third toe, which looks fine. However, when you look closely and take a harder look at it, you can see that the knees are clearly wanting to move in. There's obviously some medial rotation occurring in the femur, which when this translates to movement means that the knees want to collapse in. And you can also see there is some evidence on the right leg that the foot is starting to invert, so it's going flatter than it should do. And this is why it's important that we look from the front, the side and the back, so that we can get clear 3D ideas of what is going on with our body when we're stood still. These will only be exacerbated as we move forward. So you can see why it's important that you first assess static before you go straight into movement. As you can see, she's struggling quite heavily here with this basic movement, and it shows an issue that we need to correct an awful lot before we start to even consider loading this exercise. So we move to the movement assessment, and you have two options here. You can use the basic squat assessment and or the overhead squat assessment. You need to pick an option that suits both you and the client best. You can do both tests, one as a range of movement test and one as an analysis of dysfunction. Take your time, slow, steady repetitions, check the key areas, the head, the shoulders, the spine and the hips, the knees, the ankles and the feet. View from the front, from the side and from the rear, and take notes or video movement if you have permission. Do not confuse this assessment with an actual overhead squat exercise. It has a completely different arm position required and needs a different alignment. So you can see here from just a side view, again, there are some problems, although it's a little better as I've corrected the width of stance. But as we've gone into the overhead, a real restriction in range and a real difficulty and actually a complaint of pain.
So what does all this mean? Well, as we can see from the posture assessment, there were some misalignment issues that we need to deal with. There is a definite need to improve the posterior chain of this athlete's body to improve the flexibility and mobility within the ranges that she has, and also the depth of movement that she's capable of. So, is she an ideal candidate to do squats, weighted and loaded? No. We need a lot more work here before a loaded option of this exercise becomes a real possibility. However, there are some variations to our standard squats that would be useful, beneficial and even productive still for this person. But again, until we get the ranges sorted and the flexibility and mobility sorted, there is going to continue to be issues. So that's why I very much recommend that you tune in and watch James Gregory's excellent series on dynamic flexibility and mobility, which will complement this really, really well.
So here we have some squat options that I would use in this instance. So we have the TRX squat, allowing for a lovely deep movement, opening up those hips and knees and ankles to allow for better movement unsupported. However, you can see that the knees do want to come in, so we have to try and correct this as we go through. Easily done, as you can see, a quick correction here, and we're back on track. And then we can look at some weighted options. So we have the goblet squat, this time with the depth restriction, just to get used to using loading and initiating some movement. And equally, we have the sumo squat option, which again, once the technique is a little bit more nailed on, this will be a very beneficial option. Notice that there are different stances with these to work the target muscles. Of course, we have the simple bodyweight options of the standard bodyweight squat, or using suspension training to do things like pistol squat or the Bulgarian split squat, or of course the standard squat, which was demonstrated in the video. All of which will allow you to improve mobility. Here we have a great option, the safety bar squat, which for people with really tight shoulder and chest areas allows them to still squat reasonably heavy without the risk of losing good posture. However, of course, the caveat to this is that you still have to have a good squat movement pattern yourself to be able to safely perform this exercise. A great option, which can also be done with kettlebells. The reason why this one's so fantastic is because of the core integration that it supplies, whilst allowing a good, deep, full range of movement, so long as the assessment allows this to happen. Now, obviously, a much harder option, and the downside to this is usually flexibility through the wrists and the shoulders, making it very difficult and maybe even uncomfortable for you to hold the bar across the front. But nonetheless, the core interaction, integration, the depth of movement that you can get from this makes this an incredibly effective exercise, and one that should definitely be integrated into most people's sessions. Another great option is the genie squat. A little uncomfortable across the shoulders, and takes a little bit of getting used to, but the depth of movement that you can get from this makes this by far one of the better options that you can use in your squat program. It allows you to work reasonably heavy and good control, but again, there has to have a clear assessment analysis for you to be able to do this. Now, the Zercher squat is a very unusual squat. You don't see this being done an awful lot. It can be quite uncomfortable into the elbows, but again, it allows for a great range of movement and a nice deep squat, which helps to activate the quads, the hamstrings and the glutes far better than some other options. And of course, we have the Bulgarian split squat, a great option to bring balance to people, because a unilateral exercise, especially one for strength, is a great addition to any program. I would also add the caveat of you don't have to have such a high bench behind you to be able to perform this effectively. And of course, you could also do it using suspension training. And of course, finally, the whole reason we've got this series, the back squat. Now, I'm not anti-back squat, and I'm certainly not anti-squat. I think it's an essential exercise type that should be in there. However, the key is on the type or the variant of squat that you're doing is right and appropriate for the individual that you are training. Back squat is basically the end goal. So if we can get there, if we can get the mobility, the flexibility, and the postural alignment sorted, then back squatting is definitely the way to go.
So there we go, guys. That sort of wraps up the Better Squats video series. Hope you really enjoyed it, and would love to hear your feedback and comments about the whole series. Just to sort of put a couple of final points on it. Let's remember that the key thing is, can the person squat properly? It's like any exercise in any way. If they cannot do the action properly, they shouldn't do it to the highest level. Therefore, we need to regress it to one that is suitable and appropriate for them so that we can develop them and move them forward. Likewise, it's picking the options and having some variations in the program. Let's not forget, it doesn't matter where we line our feet up or where we line our stance up or how deep we go, we're still activating the same group of muscles that we're trying to target. But of course, the more depth we can get into the movement, the more we can activate those muscles and the better results we can get for our clients. So, I hope you enjoy it. Look forward to seeing you and catching up soon. Take care. Bye.